thought of a really cool thing for Fantasy All Star that I got the print list right there. So pretty much I was reading through my my MDHHS, my 24105, and then it said pretty much anything that I broadcast, whether I consent or not, that in business is admission to requesting information by business. That means things like if PayPal wanted information and that I had openly used PayPal, that PayPal could authorize for personal health information at this point. Interesting, like automation for the factual withheld moment of what that is to what somebody thinks. So pretty much 2022 421 no 420 hard that I had pushed the uh, the battery of 2500 with through the Binance.us through the some sets of 1,000 and the equivalent of that on a false identity by Binance.us, who established a thematic soliciting via using my my parents' real names through things like Fifth Third and Binance, all the way into coercing the solicitation of Ecos's money laundering. Money laundering is by the amount times 10 to the 10% that you would pay for to get out of jail, which you would be in debt to that loan within a time, is something like that to the highest supreme law, which at the point of the BTC being the pivotal on the storyline, and that there's no, like, it's a gesture against America, BTC at this point. So, like, Elon Musk saying that he thinks that it's cool, and it, if, if for whatever reason that the object of what Johnny Depp said that affair was notorious to this subliminal, like, I don't know, whatever that would be. So it's just wondering, like, basic questions like if you send out Bitcoin or a transactional, is it always locatable, and does it have a Zala of the intent? Because then I could call up my girl who sounded Armeria, which Armeria refused to answer the phone on the previous day, 2022 419, which someone in the back, according to what looks sounds like Armeria people, no ratio. Bro, you are banned from, you are uninvited, and you are banned, and yeah, you are shunned as somebody who had never stepped out of the box to set out landing and has spoken. You are unowned, and I am never talking to myself, even though I am. So on the list also there. So I think this is a cool informative just on the realism of this that I had gotten in the letter, which is an acceptable means of communication. So via my consent form to what is the existence of being a citizen, for what's bypassed for whatever I want information, which isn't cool. I mean, I would rather stay in the loop than not. Was that I had gotten an informant of data passed, or a mail letter from 2015, a 2015 update on 2022 via some kind of this, and on the list, all kinds of different occupations that are indestructible. Let me go find it so I can talk about. I know that, like, subject to what I'm talking about, that I'm gonna actually make up how this is really cool. And I didn't really even like whether I thought something. I didn't really have beef with said Teddy. I'm just wondering if Teddy knows my my guy Carp, because it sounds too serious already. But I say League of Legends, I just stack Annie over that, because Hera is a Greek mythology of like a wife, and that's like a risk on a weakness defense. But I said, if you got yourself to get into the game of the history of the people on where neglect, abuse, and something else, which is on the MDDHS, then it'll never seem like I'm running like in ours on anybody. That whole effect on those commands that are in junction with people who are only like, so some of the other ones on the overpass, and that is kind of this explorative of, I guess, what was the, it's kind of like a circuitous sometimes. Everyone at least individually reflects their command, and none of these should be like hedgeway, like hedge funding a singular. Wow, you think on the safety of this paper making any sound, Baby Dragon, that I don't have a problem with you? You are to my life right now. Hey, we got these ones that can get information on just a specific thing without asking any questions. Business associates. So if you use any business, and any business associates a business on a question, so look at the list. You think if these businesses are not your friend, that you are taking a step? Research. So it says information will not be provided to research without your signed informed consent, or unless research has been approved by an international review board or a privacy board, and the research ensures the privacy of your information. Business associates. These are additional examples of disclosures that may be made without your permission. There are some services provided in our organization through contracts with business associates to protect your health information. However, we require the business associates to appropriately safeguard your information. Food and Drug Administration. We may disclose to the FDA health information related to adverse effects with respect to food, supplements, products, and product defects, or post-marketing surveillance information to enable product recalls, repairs, or replacements. These could be examples like said Dixie cups for poisonings and stuff like that. Worker compensation, if there's not human rights. I just want the enamoring on like, just the in general positive of the actual fulcrum on the injustices of the actual tandems of the one-to-one existence of said functions. So we may disclose health information to the extent authorized by and to the extent necessary to comply with laws related to workers' compensations or other similar programs established by law. So any sort of mishaps with money, if there's an 11 or a 10-10 on minimum wage for contract law, and then there's a missing 10 cents or a missing 20 cents, then you're subject to be asked by anybody any one of these ones. So, law enforcement. We may disclose your health information for law enforcement purposes as required by law or in response to a valid court order. This was more like what my suggestion was for the previous concerns at like the said location and keeping the peace for what I think is the responsibility of the next one set in this list. So it says victims of abuse, neglect, or domestic violence. We may disclose information about you to a government authority such as a social service or protective agency if we reasonably believe you are a victim of abuse, neglect, or domestic violence. We will only disclose you this type of information to the extent of law extended required by law if you agree to the disclosure, or if the disclosure is allowed by law and we believe it necessary to prevent serious harm to you or someone else. So pretty much this was an entity that we're not going to bring descriptions into this for what you think of it until we read the next segment. To avert a serious threat to health or safety. If there is a compelled need, we may disclose information to prevent a serious threat to your health or safety or the health and safety of the public or another person. I mean, there's always good credits in doing points as an observer and not a bystander to make sure that the flow of everything goes. But on the scrimmage of a civil case, I say, it was whatever. You may be on the outfield of what is a zoo deck, and you might not know what's going on there on that side, especially with a lot of cars and stuff. Bro, I microwaved my phone yesterday or this morning. That's how I felt with the universal products to Google analytical for or whatever. Data analytics don't have a real effect on what people do. That's BS. Why'd I do it, and why would you question if I did it? If I did it, because then I did it. And then when I ask myself why would I do it, then why did I do it? That's not an acceptable answer. Health oversight. We may disclose health information to a health oversight agency for activities authorized by law. This will be later discussed as purple, which I can't hate. So the arbitrary of somebody that gets paid, such as, Pine Rest gets paid, SWs get paid, and then, which is it's not a bad thing for people to get paid. And then, Pro Med gets paid, but then Pro Med doesn't know that they have the power to ask for. This is just an example of asking for health. I mean, completely utilized in any of these types of things, like health oversight, you're obligated. Like, you can ask, you could probably have the right to say that you can ask the questions for any of these lateral. And, well, we'll see how that works, but we don't know how that works yet. That gives a lot of power to the actual fishbone of that. So, inmates. If you are an inmate or a correctional institute or the under custody of law, we may release medical information about you or the official release notice like this in safety or the health of the others and the constitution of the correctional institution. I mean, this is like a lot of those vetoes could do like over because, like, well, I'm not even telling you possible plays because it's not like a ploy on the intent of something that is not the body of what I said, so that's why I don't really see that. But I'm like, maybe there's business associates that prove themselves. Like I said, the blacklisting of MetaMask completely wrong because MetaMask versus whatever I thought was the infidel of that when you use the passphrase again, that you can customize the name as you do it, like as you recover it, and that it did not show all of the accounts right away, that there's an option to add account assumes that if those re-entered that the blank accounts or the concern if name was not correct on the second account, then would my money be missing? These are all like alienable sources for real phishing. And I'll give another one for MetaMask. Why does Coinbase overlay MetaMask on the login? That was not really that good. I'm like looking. even though my iron bar was being disrespected, then I was looking at something, I was like this, and I said, hey, it's not larceny because I am not obligated to listen to you solicit the suggestion of somebody withholding my money, and that you are the sender of the wallet. I'm not going to complicate that you are at the correction of what is at that. And then I'm just fast forwarding it by forwarding Fifth Third's awareness of the purchase on the total accounting of the Binance.us from the Fifth Third account on the exact amount and not past that. So that's pretty much all I could do. And, it's just like the coerce, but I never collected on the set thing that I was opposing, and I wouldn't, because the mishap on the new information is that set 1 is so good that I would not even want to say it, and that's the only reason I said it. But not at that point. Okay. Alright. So pretty much it was pretty much fun. I hope so. Hey, I don't even mind sound. It's like I had like this weird like cupboard thing where I had sound, and then my ears got super swole. Not like cauliflower swole, but like a little bit like swole, and then a 360, and then I got like like fatty acid. Well, I think I'm just running somebody else's different body on a command on whatever, and then what does it matter on me to the conveyance of the actual remedy of what they think is kind of whatever like that. I don't know much fatness like that besides somebody who did me wrong. So and then the light of Apollo has shone from the heavens, and it clarified all the direct crimes and derivatives between the persons at the Laos mine. And it still conveys that EXPI is blue listed, even for the audacity of not having that there and not being at the foot at the works implementation to do that under a false alias of somebody mechanicking somebody's, which it seems that there's skin data, but that it would form from mistrust or that is somebody else. But that's kind of lame at this point. We don't have enough rep points to fully dive into that. But I'd be like, why not? That is like the most sensible way on the overturn to see that. I was like, do you have a hot mom? That's how I feel. Somebody who doesn't look like they have a hot mom has a hot mom. Do you have a hot mom? Just kidding. Anyway, then yeah, I never touched that. I called about whatever, completely private conversation, and in the same way that each constituent is private to that conversation is the same way via my method of analytics that your information is private, except in post when you ulteriorate on criminal activity that's relevant to my state of being or business. And I'm a pretty tolerant person. So, pretty much, I wanted to just address that before Echoes. I wanted to augment myself into reality on the negativity of what I am before Echoes got time to do a similar sort of defamation. And when IP, or the energy of intellectual property energies, accumulates either by sprite, ether, or unconsent with the bandwidth on the transfer, like transferring persons that identify being found between Google Analytics 4 and Universal Products Analytics, these things are relevant, and what these things are on the segment is pretty much purely analytics. And by the time that the re-engine to Google Analytics 4 apps, there'll be a halt to the analytics of what's for that, and the complexity, what we'll later talk about in the summary of Python, then we'll understand how some of that was a bit extreme, or why did we destroy our phone this morning, things like that. So there's a lot of theories, but this is like on the format of collective recovery of data that is has connectivity to our actual being. Then we have to reconstruct ourselves with only the things that we know. So yeah, we'll take that point, we'll check it off, and then we'll talk about the different subjects as we go. I must be feeling generous because these points on this list are a bit too high. So if I can still get like reprimanded for things that supposedly what you don't say, unless you have broken the law. So if you have broken the law, Fifth Third, Binance.us, not PancakeSwap unless the PancakeSwap acquisition was so smooth, Echos.Armenia or .am. I don't listen to the radio. I want my money back. Ah man, I sort of kind of listen to the radio. We had a mishap with the login of Gods Unchained. I love new games and I love everything. I hate the idea of the patriarchy of a heroic male Viking conduiting with the real world of what the dissenter of that mating ritual means to the like that there are no hot boys in that circle. And so, but for the real sake of what I think, the login is a bit too rough. And it's like in fantasy on the not due diligence, it would be like if I'm logging into your thing, I want to feel like I'm in the login room, and then if I'm on the logout area, I want to feel like I'm in the logout area. And what you're allowed to keep as like a subscriber to that, then I kind of want to feel like I at least have some grip. I feel like the mandibles on the previous data that you have is contrary to the Methodist, or either the ideals of somebody cause those things to like the programmer to re-engineer it to the other side, and that really being what I would call the persona of intent. And we don't play those games around here. We proprietary our intellectual property uh, according to our proximity of what our property is. So I think there was a ramp on what was acceptable via the plus plus of the computers and stuff. AI, faceting the free open world of the unidentified to solicit like a not a Neanderthal, a like a nihilism kind of, that you are the solicitor on something that it's unable, like I'm unable to say the sentence of how inadequate of an answer that is to the very profound question of your work. And also that embodies a human being that's kind of disrupting. Also, on the eddy of the flow, you do have a time limit by that time, and we'll be running a civil criminal circular case. A civil case is, hey, I bumped Teddy. Does Teddy want to press charges that I bumped him, or is it even Andy, or is it even Andy argument court that said other guild had got him? And then my offer on the softball matches to fix those as somebody is holding the couch of the anarchy. It's easy to diverge on a lot because it's done by buttons, and in some cases said so, but when your research is faxing the button as your arbitrary for a what is your social conformity, then we're gonna have to look at your elite ID and see what each type of person is doing. So Ecos's spokeswoman's conformity is that it's pretend to see this at the urgency of like a kind of maybe that they got a case and it's running kind of quick. But there's like so much energy on like the actual like there's a place that there's the dictionary, but we don't know that the amount of what Gods Unchained or the theory of the Vikings is subsiding, and then that the storyline is I didn't get a silver axe through my head at this moment. That don't make too much sense. There's not enough thinking going on here that if it's disruptive of the thought process. So if somebody went there, I don't want them to have the right to battery passed. I mean, you can't say that you're selective on something you notion for somebody and tee that as a battery. And I look forward to everything that will go. But that somebody is possibly watching this, and that that the point of okay, let's take a look at this list. That victims of abuse, neglect, or domestic violence, that you don't apply that victims of abuse, neglect, or domestic violence isn't expected to do their work via laws enforcement. That because said person's a sucker or number two thinks that a number two server, he thinks being the second server is a compliment to how stupid that they think they're a participant on actual words of location of accepting themselves as something like that. Having augmented molars all over the area, that's not alright. Sarcasm is never serious, and building trust on a place where they're not, that is not you. That is, I will have to use one of my creatures, and they are pretty cruel. And I don't think you can. I will have to open the gates of hell because this is not a good enough answer. A great one would be python.org. On the questions of this, what would be the most duplicit way to say this, being at the verge of the Google Analytics 4, what that is. Um, I can't trust enough of that stuff because arrays kind of motion and that disarray of an open source and allowing something to answer something or the registry of the unconcern of what some things are, we're going to find a lot of identities on these unidentified cookie trackers and things like that. I mean, a lot of things like safe trackers and things like that are, everything is technology based, from CDMA to the GSM switch, and all I request to cooperate is that I don't hear anything about the Sun Dynasty in my ear. What about I think that Charlie's Angels are honestly the ones looking for the Trinity, the primary ones that have actual real jobs. Not that the primaries don't have real jobs, like a social worker, a behavior technician. I mean, real threats, real ninjas. A kindergarten like server. They could be like a miniature on this list of health or safety. And we come into contact with cruelties on almost all these notes. That's kind of like, do I want to step into this? Well, it don't matter to me. Please stay like, be careful. Rabies, the cure to rabies in fantasy is having timers and listening to a tumbling laundry. Well, and then running like high tenacity or trample, I notice. You always hear the answer of feral, but that's not the answer really. So that was a good list of a protective one right there. Now let's probably look at, Splinterlands and then look at that then. I like this one. I kept that on because I'm gonna, if I want, it doesn't sound too bad this time, but if I wanted to, that I would try to remove that. I know it seems like sometimes it seems like I'm not trying with the design, but sometimes I was like, I'm taking, like, my favorite shows that are running up are like how Snowpiercer aligns with the revival of The Factory, and that's pretty cool. I know I can't. But let's say if I wanted to say said factory's name, but I didn't know if I had permission, then you would have to be in the health and safety of the formatting for the trust on psychotherapy, or know how to create somebody's trust. But it's kind of a difficult formula via the medical, it's because it's like trust formed by you know, a untheoretical thing or something. See, we have all kinds of jumbled data that, I know that I pushed myself to the maximum, that it was whatever, and then now kind of dealing with this. Alright, let me try to get into this game right now. Anyways, I was talking about Snowpiercer, how Snowpiercer related to the work right there. Not the old movie, like the all ulterior of that. I'm talking about the Snowpiercer, the show that was running on. Supposedly there's a show of it running, so that's cool. And yeah, it's on sample, so the ones that are not in the clear are Facebook, the Facebook wishbone login dilemma. That caused a lot of problems just for something like, why can somebody assume to log into something for somebody else? How did you secure somebody's safety? How did you secure baby dragons? Why did you enable baby dragons lifestyle by applying engineer solutions teams to the pity of get off my back? If you only have a +1 on your back or a -1 on your back, then that'll mean that you are the vice or the top dog. It means that you're going to revolve around the Sun Dynasty. That means I pretty much have to watch out for you to make sure you're banned and know that anybody registered on my list of undesirables is subject to the intent of that rivalry. That you have no permissions to alias yourself in my proximity of my location without that, and your Sun commander had decided to change their number or had imagined themselves in the What's Up app. Why did you change your number post the GSM switch? It does not matter what number I have because my integrity is completely stronger, and that the readings that I'm hearing say hypocrite on slow points that we're kind of having a dissuade right here. You're never gonna solve that mystery because the Rubik's Cube, to the core of what that essentially is just the actual, like, whatever. And I'm not that lame to be theoretical on something or that cool, but I just gotta say, before any problems can be adjusted, forwarded to Binance.us. Why did said Troy have same name as parents? And then why did Fifth Third say said beep to said thing had gotten said thing? And what is that? And who has been soliciting commands? Who has been beyond their commands, and who observes those commands to think that because that is not that their function is not the purpose of what they are, that you have provided yourself with the soliciting and conspiracy of racketeering is where Failure Family is going with that. And I'm also a registered business, so I can also ask you things directly. And since I am a business and I am the chairman, that means you cannot do stuff like interrupt me, or no, you can't do stuff like not answer me. You will have to address yourself if I ask anybody on any kind of list. That I did it well means pretty much I have to ask that, and then with those respects, uh, those things are unbound with only facts. Pretty much an undeserved list, and all the things that are kind of like auspicious, and then of what you would not do that. I mean, the turbine is too strong. I mean, I don't want to ever see anything like this again. I want to see the proxy. So we got a few things on the array. Who's more likely to see the video? So it's first. It'll be Miguel, and if Miguel ever vouched himself as a person who said that he was able to do something, and then I had caught him, then I can do that. I mean, I have a command sheet of all the information of said person that I can counter react by the central of me being that program to something happening to this person's whole life. I mean, if there was a such thing as a platform, I don't think there's anybody, that has achieved like grandmaster status except, that except me, and like some, pretty much nobody else that I know. Like a level 4 house orientated, having what they have. I'd say I only know one other grandmaster who, or like, there's only like two people that I've, people who have stricken to their job, always been like that, never let anything, wife, kids, anything, pretty much make any subjugations and any diplomacy of how things are orientated. Never liable, always one to one with themselves, never living for the lone, never avoiding that serene actual idea of your neuro that you have alone, or that you would ever be concerned with that. That is what is required on the Elite ID. So yeah, as I was going that there is, and I already, the camera and the dot. What is the camera and dot? Oh, yes, I had reported sexual harassment for somebody at the risk of the ulterior of the server on a social conformity at previous location right away. So I'm not subject to the responsibility of how somebody inanimated themselves for their last identity. Nor, nor do I hold any reward for, any feelings towards anything like that. I did my best to convey safety for yourself, and I, suggested the humor and defended this person several times against things that were obvious happening, obvious downfalls to what would happen. So saying something like Miguel saying, I don't even care if you get raped or if I'm right there. I don't exist in the conversation. Hey, until you deal with my problems and you're actually part of this list for extractions, then consider a Naruto at the Death Forest for what you're not. And consider yourself back dumped in the Death Forest until you qualify to enter the Death Forest. So, anyways, as we're talking about this part that is already attached to my mind and body, then we can talk about it. Also, the 10 police snitched on themselves because they called right back, and on the same day, on these this the hierarchy of this against a full roster on Fishbone Command had acted on their own behalf, and they've been responding with like dumb duck responses via the Lakeshore thing, which it's not fine. It's a caller to get my federal imperialist sniper or my federalist doctrine sniper at position, but that's pretty much it. Any reinforcements that are associated with Valley Family will have a red light inside of the vehicle sanctioned by that to prove that they are a part of said team. It's like getting this real control on this like this part of where somebody thought that they were stepping, funnily enough, is kind of where we're getting with that one. No, somebody has claimed that they own a house at the same time of that, doing the same thing, and we've, the conformity of a non-conclusive is not conclusive with anything. Therefore, it's like automatic allowing anything to be acceptable. And this is not a Mormon church in this kind of way. So, no, I'm gonna throw something in the air. It was your choice, or what? Bruh, it's almost like that by looking at this, like, none of these can be, like, as, like, alienable as I want them to be. Hey, there is evidence that the real back end of my mind was disabled by um, poor quality and what was, a forward kind gesture combined with backwards betrayal on payment and so on. The purple is wanted by Failure Family, and so is the Echoes team, and so is the 436-4400 Fifth Third Bank Core Security possibility. So is Eileen Zayasani. She had changed her phone number. I believe that Miguel took the 50 idea of what he did on that morning, on what I had said to him on that Instagram, called the police on the confidence, and was planning to celebrate at that time where I had taken away that alias, where said coworker was eating egg rolls with them. And then I waited and saw a suggestion on the mind of what said boyfriend would do of that person, which was go to the area where they're unintended, where there was 2 cups of what would be suggested as the liquor to that, for what would be the acceptability between the coworker lookalike of the Oakley's Law group, which I had fed to the Echoes group to look at, and which I had called on the intent of what I wanted to do on a collective central that I had created. And now that I can pass on to a 5-star, which is somebody who can send a paper like this at any and exact time, or any law over the over an overseer. So it's kind of in a foul with how this is going. I misunderstand. But we're just gonna stay here. We go by the list, we pretend, and then we inmate, and then go by that, and then wait until then. We have better luck recovering that data from you by pretending you're an inmate or ostracizing you as an inmate, even though the FBI used your reverse analytics on a splitter. I mean, it's unfortunate that the splitter of a person for when they were decent was based on intel given by the past for a disingenuous group in Pine Rest. Whether it was the Van Omen one or the Cutlerville, Michigan one, those are the main concerns that were addressed with Libby, Abigail, and Cassie as the primary on that. And the cross-county conformity between those 2 different counties, Ottawa County and Muskegon County, which really creates that picture there. But like you see on here, there's a time limit on the overall barricade to assume the safety of the area. So I'll give it the safety measures a review at the end of the season ends in. And yeah, that's just, I appreciate that independently of the idea of that our light was out, that somebody had paid for a stoplight in concern. That's nonsense. That's crazy. That is unreal. Coincidentally, appreciation. And KPI is in Armenia. It has higher bandwidth, the Armenia thing, which has an X collaborative possibly with the third. And I have a collaborative with absolute autocracy and law, because I didn't go to the law even with what is best and what is right now, and those are not always gonna be easy things to get back. And I did talk to the fusion, so that is true. It's unremovable. It's pretty much autopilot for victory right there. answer for anything, if you don't think you have to answer for anything, and you're soliciting your intent, and somebody needs to figure out how they're talking, and that my location, accessible, and the significance of what I'd done at that point to the amount of actions that were taken is ridiculous. By the time that Echoes assumes that they would attempt to assassinate me, is the same time that Keck is suggestive of Diedrich attempting to assassinate me because he's lazy. That's my assumption in fantasy, to create the antibodies of that area. Hey, if YouTube wanted to pretend that you're an array of that you're important more than you think, then they could create an alias where the said box of the said JavaScript of that YouTube video wasn't there, or that it was taken off. But it doesn't seem like that is the broadcast of the actual contact that on this list, if I say it, then it's applicable to my consent via YouTube or via video. So it's as expansive as things that you see me do, or what I use, and the awareness to what I do, and stuff like that. And with that information, I just don't know. I don't know enough about this person anymore. That was cowardice. I got this whole thing under control all by myself. And okay, so I took this part where I was like, going all crazy, and then I thought something more myself, and I see people pushing themselves, and then I thought da 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 da, but I set out something, and it was best to my physical, but then it's just garbo right past it. So that's kind of that. I don't even know why I say half the stuff that I do. I'm like a drunk. I feel bad that way. I'm like, man, is that drunk thing of where I solemnly swear to myself of the drunkenness of my drunk, that something drunk will happen to drunk. Okay, let's see. What I had said, MetaMask is operated by Web3, so that I think that's different than HTML5. So Web3 may be responsible, or the wrap text of Web3 would be responsible for the Coinbase's overlay, or that would be the in conjunction on not the responsibility, and that's a burnout at the rate of what we're talking. So let's put that through. Alright, pretty much that, and yeah. Well, I wanted to play some game, but this was a pretty cool interior to that, and yeah, it'll look better than that. But I'm an India style player, so I don't ever do anything. I lay on my gym mat. That's my role. Man, I cannot eat with myself. Alright, so now I really did not have time to make a 2 hour, so this was a special segment on the uh, failure family is colon autocracy, and we're gonna talk about fantasy games and stuff, and kind of after. Thank you for watching, I know that my hate for rabies was too strong, and I'm too consensual with how words are stringent to what I say, and that I can't help that I may have rabies. That's a problem. I need to I need to return, activate the conjuring, and hey, that you would create the Greeks to say those things is it's my job to make sure that those Greeks don't benefit your status if you're in my way. Alright, thank you for watching. Any relatives, feel free to type in my name, find my address. Anybody who just tried to attempt to assassinate me, feel free to not let go. Feel free to know that I'll be 210 pounds and a groundskeeper, and I can drink heavy to be at 180, no problem. That I can kick 6.5 inches in about .6 seconds, and that martial law is that new skill. When I go through all the phases of my story, that'll be great. Hey, he could. So pretty much on that case, he can choose. But if he didn't choose, then I can suggest the implementation of my thematic of that he already knew that he could never rent or get a house in Michigan. So if he is just like, us, being SOB, then he says maybe, and I'll be like, maybe I don't know this person's strat, but that's why they said it. And then that was their antibody or their D to the Greek of their next action. That was my assumption. It's kind of where I'm going, but I'm not really going anywhere. Because then I had to lay a med pack and peace out and kind of see how the board is rolling. Alright, that's all the updates for how I want to set up the board right there. But I was like, dude, Miami versus what? Furious Chicken? Psych, bro. You're not going to play. Shutting down the second server for sure. Alright, not really like that. Hey, even all the way down to the Pisces is still the correct play. Alright, so pretty much